But anyway, we would put this milk in this can, and we had a deal. It was about this big, and it had holes in the bottom, and we put a little mesh in there, a little cotton mesh, and screw it down, and it had holes in it, and we'd strain that milk through there in that can, and then we'd draw that water out of the well, and we'd had half a barrel over it. We'd set that milk in there overnight, and the water out of the well was pretty cold, really. I mean, it was a hand-dug well. Everything was hand-dug, and we'd put it in next morning and get up and do that same thing again. Milk those cows, go through that same episode. Now, I don't know if we milk some twice a day or some just once a day. I can't remember that for sure. But anyway, then we'd strain that fresh milk in there in the morning and put it in there, and then it had handles on the side, and it was pretty heavy. I mean, the can was probably about half to 3/4 full, and it held, I think, 10 gallons. But so it said, and then I'd have something like a wheelbarrow, and it was made to fit that can. It was homemade out of wood, and I'd set that in there, and I'd go up there, and I'd know about what time he's coming to pick up that milk, so I'd get up there a little early, and I'd wait, and he would bend down and pick that. He was a strong guy, and pick that milk up, and then he would just throw down an empty can, and I'd put that empty can, and I would bring it back home, and that was our daily routine with the milk business, and so I mean, we stayed a long time there at Grandma and Grandpa's. There was quite a bit of things going on in my life at that time when I was growing up, from, like I said, before starting school, and going all the way up until we moved to Grange when I was in the middle of my 7th year. But it was just some neat experience there. We did have some Tarzan movies every now and then on Saturday, and we had a big old mulberry tree down not too far from the house, and in fact it wasn't very far at all, really, just outside the yard down near the hog pen, and so I was up there because I like to climb trees a little bit. I saw Tarzan do it. I mean, he'd just go from one limb to another and one limb to another, and so I said, well, crud, if he can do that, well, surely I can do that. I'm younger than he was. He was Johnny Weissmuller. I'm just plain old Gene, so I get over and I swing a couple times, and about the third time I swung, well, I had too much weight, and I didn't have that limb secured right, and I slipped and I fell. And I don't remember how far it was, but I guess it was 10, 12, 14 feet. I don't know. It was pretty high, not real high, but I fell. And it wasn't a lot of grass. There was kind of dirt and grass mixed up, and going down to the hog pen, well, there were tree roots running out from the oak tree. And I'd run down there every now and then, go down and feed the hogs. And man, when I got up, my right hand, my hand was almost all the way back. I'd sprained it all the way back to here, and my left one was curved. And I was hurting. But I was hurting so bad I didn't want to tell my dad and mom that I fell out of that tree. So I told a story. I went up there, and Dad and Mom looked at that, and oh my gosh, we jumped in that Model A, and he took me to Weimar, and Dr. Potters, I think, was a doctor then. put my hands under this, like it was a fluorescent light. And he said, August, you go around in back of him and grab him tight. He said, my dad went around me and grabbed me real tight. And he had my hands under this fluorescent thing, and he said, take a deep breath. He did, and he just jerked that thing down. He looked at it, and he went over, and this one wasn't not near as bad, but it was bad too, but not as bad. So he jerked that one down again, and my dad was holding on, because I mean, he jerked. And so he looked at it, kind of worked it around a little bit, and all they had was a metal plate, had a piece like a roll of nickels there, and it kind of curved back in here, and it was just a metal plate. And so they just took gauze and just wrapped it real tight, both hands, like that. And so I don't know when the conversation came up, but Dad said, how'd this happen? I said, oh, Dad, I was running down there to the hog pen, you know, them dadgum roots that come out of those trees there. I just tripped over those roots and fell. So they bought that. So I never told them that I fell out of a tree, because that'd have been more serious. So I took the lesser of two stories and went with that one, and it stuck. So anyway, for about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I know I couldn't do anything. I mean, I couldn't carry water. I couldn't do anything. In fact, I had trouble eating. It was real clumsy, and of course the big problem was going to the bathroom. But for doing number 2 particularly. But anyway, I got over that eventually, and then I learned my lesson. I did not play Tarzan anymore. No. And while I was there at Board Ark, at Grandpa Billick's place, we had, we had our Christmas, and wasn't much. It was, like I said, I've said this time and time again, don't anybody feel sorry for me or that we had it rough. That was just the times. That's just the way they were. And there were other people that were in the same situation that lived in a rural area. Now those lived in town, they had electricity and all that. But anyway, in some of the rural areas, in other parts of the area had electricity really, particularly where the dairy farmers were. But I know at Christmas time, Grandpa Billick would always order a basket of apples and oranges and grapefruit from the valley, and he'd get a pretty big box of walnuts, which were kind of rare to find back in those days, if my memory is correct. He'd have them there in that room. In fact, the room where I was born in, that's where he would always put them. And so Christmas time came. Well, Mom and Dad and myself, Dad would take his saw and put it on his shoulders. Mom would go number 1. I'd be behind Mom. Dad'd be behind me, and we'd walk through the pasture, and because there were cedar trees. And she'd look around for a little while, and she'd say, August, that's the one I want. So my dad went over and got that puppy down, and we and I would take turns dragging it to the house. It wasn't a big, humongous tree, but it was at least taller than we were, or a little taller than we were. And then Dad would trim it a little bit and make a little stand for it and set it in water, because those things would dry out pretty quick. And we would just wrap it with we call it tinsel. It was kind of like tinfoil and some kind of little old wrap, and put a little angel on top. And we put those candles on there. We'd have a few of those candles, maybe 8 or 10, that were the regular candles, and you'd light them. And we'd always have a bucket of water over there because people lost their houses around Christmas time. Didn't happen very often, but it did happen. Those trees would catch on fire, and if they were dry, I mean, they were just like incinerator. They would just burn very, very fast. And so we would do that, and I'd hang up my stocking, and had one of those old long stockings you wear, and socks you wear, and high tops and all that, and just make sure you didn't have a hole in the toe because you didn't want anything to fall out. And they would stick an apple, orange, and I guess get some stuff from Grandpa Billy too, and put some walnuts in there, and banana, and I'd hang it up there. And we had that wood stove kitchen was over here, and the wood stove, little room over here, the wood stove, and that's where the tree was, and that's kind of our main entrance, our main room there, and when I draw it, I'll explain that. But we'd have Christmas there, and Mom and Dad, particularly my dad, he would say, there he goes, because we were woods all around, and he'd say, there's Santa Claus, there he goes. And man, I'd run to the window, and he said, dadgummit, you just missed him, he just disappeared in the woods. I went through that for probably 2 weeks before Christmas, just, I don't know, maybe that's too long. But anyhow, it happened quite a bit. And but I was always late. Just burned me. But they always got me a cap pistol. And I'll show that to you next time I film. I've got somebody writing something in it, and I got a cap pistol every year in a holster and a little belt and a wind-up caterpillar, and sometimes a little hat. And that cap pistol would only last about 2-3 months, and the spring would break. Because you'd break it open, you'd put those caps in, and they were they were coiled up in a circle, and you'd pull it out, and then you'd pull the trigger, or it would feed it up, and you'd snap it again, it would feed it up, and it had a little bit of powder in it, and it'd pop. And so when the spring break, well then when it's broke, well you just got to make do. So I put a rubber band around that cap pistol, and I fired single shot. I just pull the thing up and pull the hammer back and fire it. Pull it up, fire it. And so that's what I did. And then I put a little bandana around my hat and find me a turkey feather, and I'd be an Indian for a while. So I'd be playing cowboys and Indians with myself. So that's kind of what I did to entertain myself a little bit. And but like I said, I always had chores to do, so I kept fairly busy, not overworked, but I had things to do.